What's up, everybody? James Duggan here, Blizzcon 2019 for IGN. I just went hands-on with Diablo 4. Very, very exciting stuff. For those of you that played Diablo 2 and like Diablo 2 and like the direction of the franchise at that point, I have a lot of really good news for you. For those of you who like the way Diablo 3 played, I have a lot of really good news for you. For those of you who've never played Diablo and are looking for a new, interesting action RPG to play, a lot of great news. So what we have for you in terms of footage is some off-screen footage as well as footage provided by Blizzard. So we're going to be using that. I have a lot to get through. There was a ton of content in this demo. It's a 20-minute gameplay demo, but I played it twice and did completely different things each time. The leash kind of came off, so to speak. They let you access things like the skill menu, the inventory. So I dove into all of it, and hopefully I'll inform you on exactly what I played. Let's start at the beginning. The playable classes. You can choose the Barbarian, the Sorceress, or the Druid. Those are all returning classes, and they're different character aesthetics. You can choose gender as well as kind of just your overall looks. There are different presets. Whether that will go into full-fledged character customization later on, who knows? But anyway, you choose a class. I played the Barbarian as well as the Druid. The Barbarian has 4 weapons. Count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, equipped at all times. There's some skills like Frenzy that require you to dual wield. There's some skills like Skewer that require you to have a bladed weapon like a sword or an axe. It deals a damage over time effect. And basically you use all of these weapons for different things. The animation is you pull it out and do different stuff with it. There are skill categories, and it looks to be the kind of old style Diablo 2 allocating skill points to specific skills you want to use. I wasn't able to respec, but I think that's probably a demo thing more than a design decision, so let's just keep going on. I also played the Druid. The Druid is really interesting because every time you use an ability, you shapeshift. So if you use a resource generator, like the Druid's resource is Spirit, you shapeshift into a werewolf. You use the Spender Pulverize, a big AoE ground slam. You use that Fury, or that Spirit, and then you turn into a bear. And that came in really handy when I got this really cool staff called Power Stone that we probably don't have any B-roll of, but I'm going to talk about anyway. Every single time that you shapeshift, a bolt of lightning comes down and hits an enemy. So that fundamentally changed the way that I was thinking about playing this game. So you start in this cave, you're killing skeletons, classic Diablo stuff, desaturated, realistic looking graphics, not nearly as cartoony as something like Diablo 3. You go through the cave and you crawl through this crawl space and emerge in the world, and notably that crawl space is its own cinematic with your character's face. In 2019, the fidelity is such that you don't need a different cutscene to be able to see your character up close and personal. Now, once you're out of that crawl space in this demo, you go into, maybe most exciting in the entire demo, a shared world space. So for those of you who played Destiny, this is something very akin to that. There are going to be other players running by you emergently. You can invite them to a party. You don't have to be in a party to do the same stuff and to phase into their world. You'll just see a druid running along as a bear or a sorceress freezing some skeletons, and you can decide to adventure with them or not. There are a lot of different activities to do in the world. There are public events and public bosses. There's a main quest line you can partake in the demo, which has you going to a town where you can't use any abilities, and it's conventional Diablo town stuff, and then you follow kind of a very conventional chain into an instanced, meaning that the only people you take in your party, or the only ones you're going to see in there, cave that ends with this really epic boss fight against a drowned witch with a lot of telegraphs and cool loot and stuff like that. So there is still that kind of conventional narrative quest hook driving you along. There are optional quests. But then if you go back out into the open world, there's a lot of just emergent stuff to do. There's a shrine that you can destroy, get the buff, and then go summon a public boss. This crazy undead dragon thing that I couldn't defeat in the time that I had. So you basically wait around, kind of like Warhammer Online, if you ever played that, public events, very similar to that. It'll give you a timer, you kind of attune to a stone, and then it'll give you a timer saying the boss will spawn in 5 minutes. It kind of gets everybody around, gives everybody an alert, a la Destiny 2 public events, and then you try and kill the boss. Bosses, notably, are very mechanically rich. There's a lot of dodging. As a character of any class, you can hit space to dodge. It's kind of a dash. Something like those of you who played Diablo on Switch or console, PC players get that now too, and that can get you out of the way of something like a skill shot from a boss. So historically in the Diablo franchise, if you were going to stun somebody, you can stun smaller enemies, but you can't stun the bigger enemies. That's changed. If you have a stun ability, you don't need to take it off your hotbar for a boss fight because bosses have a stun meter now. So you stun it, it adds to that stun meter, and when that meter is filled, there's a stun phase, and you get to do a bunch of damage and stuff like that. I was also able to access the inventory of the character and simplify from the stats of Diablo 3 and previous Diablos. So far, what I've been able to get is all attack, defense, and life. Very simple, very straightforward. Seems class agnostic. You can pick that stuff up, but obviously there is still stuff like that Thunderstone legendary I was discussing that is very, very good for the Druid. There's also other modifiers, and the loot common, uncommon, rare, all the way up to Legendary is still definitely intact. So my first impression of loot, even though a lot of the drops were obviously forced, was definitely a good one. There are a lot of different skills, and skills are separated in categories that are generally generators, spenders, cooldown-driven stuff, and then every single class has ultimate skills. The 2 ultimates I used for the Barbarian was Wrath of the Berserker, which if you play Diablo 3, you know all about that. You get Fury Generation, you actually get a Berserker passive buff now that increases your damage as well as your speed. And then for the Druid, it was called Cataclysm, and maybe the coolest ability I used. So you hit it, it's got a giant cooldown, it does exactly what you imagine it would. Bolts of lightning start striking enemies everywhere, tornadoes are kind of going, and the tornadoes push enemies back. There's a lot of environmental interaction. There are skills for the Barbarian where you charge them and it deals a certain amount of damage, but if you charge the enemy into an object or a wall, it deals additional damage there. All right, so I kind of want to wrap out on my general thoughts on Diablo 4. I'm a big fan of the Diablo franchise. Diablo 2 I played when I was 11 years old. One of the first games that I played. The first multiplayer games, the first RPG, action RPG, isometric, all of those things. So I was introduced to it, and the way that that game really developed forward for me was into World of Warcraft. I feel like a lot of the motifs went there, and when we got Diablo 3, it was, you know, these are kind of old complaints, but cartoony, spammy, mechanically neutered at the beginning. Obviously, it's become a lot better since then, and we've gotten greater riffs and a lot of cool stuff like that. But I guess the point I'm trying to make here is Diablo 4 is an uncompromised vision of Diablo. It's the Diablo that I want, at least based on this demo. Obviously, there's a lot more to play, but this feels like a 2019 evolution. This is the kind of stuff that Path of Exile is doing, that Torchlight Frontiers are doing. This is the space where the isometric action RPG is evolving in 2019, and it's really, really, really exciting to see Blizzard foray into that space, because you get this amazing graphical fidelity. Mechanically, it felt amazing, dodging these telegraphs, getting this loot, all of this stuff. I just can't wait to play more of it. So there's going to be a lot more Diablo, including a full preview. I'm going to go play the Sorcerers again, get hands-on again, if you can believe that. And you can find all those impressions and details on the nitty-gritty on IGN.com for all things BlizzCon. Keep it right here on IGN.